Right, welcome everybody to this episode. It's a great pleasure to introduce to you Dr. Simon Darcy, who is Associate Professor of Events, Sport and Tourism at the University of Technology in Sydney. Hi, Simon.
Hi, how are you, Peter?
Good, I'm good. I was really interested in an article that you wrote recently. I've known Simon for a number of years, and he is one of the leading academics, researchers with a grasp on the practical aspects of inclusion for people with disability. And I was really wanting to, after I read this article in the conversation, which you can see in this episode, I was really interested just to get some more thoughts from Simon around some of the issues raised in that article. So I've got 2 or 3 questions right now that I'm going to pose to Simon around some of the issues that he raised in that article that you can see here. The first one, Simon, is that now the Paralympics have come and gone. The statistics say that there is no subsequent increase in club participation following something like the Paralympic Games. Now, you know, I would question that in a way. Is that right? Aren't people more inspired to give sport a go because of the Paralympic Games?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. The first thing I'd say is that, you know, you need to contextualise the question. So the research that exists is predominantly around the Olympics, and the research around the Olympics is very clear that there's very little empirical data support that there's an increase in participation in those sports. So John Coates, for example, got a little bit upset with some fellow colleagues of mine, Stephen Frawley, Christine Tui and Tony Beale, who clearly showed through the ERAS data, the Exercise, Recreation and Sport Survey data, which is collected nationally from, correct me if I'm wrong, Peter, 1999 through to 2010.
I think that's right, yep.
Yeah. That there was no increase, and in fact in some Olympic-related sports, there's actually an increase in participation numbers over the coming years. So that's the first one. The second one, with regards to the Paralympics specifically, myself and David Legg from Canada, Laura Meisner from Canada, and Keith Gilbert from London, England, have just carried out research looking at the legacy of the Paralympics. And to be quite frank, there's just hardly any research in any case. So I would probably support your observations, and probably Ken Black, isn't it, from the UK, that anecdotally there's probably a flurry of things going on, but we're not really documenting these things in any significant way.
Yeah, I guess we can say we suspect that, yes, it does inspire people, but some of the challenges of inclusion of people with disability into sport and activity will certainly not be affected by something like the Paralympic Games, as good and as great as that is.
Certainly, and there was a fantastic article, I think, in The Guardian, literally the day after the Paralympics finished, that was by the Leonard Cheshire organisation, that basically said that the gyms and fitness centres of the UK are in no position to accept an increasing number of people with disabilities, even if they wanted to pay their money and start being included in gyms and fitness clubs, as of that very week. Because they're not set up infrastructure-wise, and they're not set up training-wise, and they're certainly not set up attitudinally within the staff within those centres.
Yep. In an era of inclusion, it kind of leads on to the next question. In an era of inclusion, do we still need targeted programs to encourage people with disabilities to participate in sport?
Without a doubt, and without a doubt for a whole series of reasons. I think it's really interesting. Really interesting. It's a little bit like access in the built environment. Now, people are astounded when I tell them that I can't get into my local shops, and they say, "But that seems incredible in this day and age." Well, there's so many little, let's call them obstacles or barriers that individuals with disabilities are dealing with. And I'm talking not the elite level, I'm talking just the average Jack and Jill in the suburbs, that unless there's specific programs that target and assist in a macro policy sense, that is transport, cost of participation, and really importantly for people with high support needs, attendance support. So for somebody like my level of support need, even to be involved in very good programs with inclusion like Sailability, I still have to have an attendant that will come with me that's used to doing transfers in a safe way to get me into the boat to have a crack. So we need to do things at a macro level, but then the sports organisation themselves need to have a series of programs in place, from those people that have got sporting experience through to those that have absolutely no experience and need a series of coaching and skill development to start to feel confident before they could move into mainstream environments.
Yeah. So where do you think then, this is a bit of a question without notice, where do you think then this perception of inclusion, that we should, inclusion means we shouldn't have to make all these adaptations in society in the future, that we'll just be all included into what happens there? So where do you think these, will that ever come a day when that's the case, or where does this perception that we don't actually need to adapt and modify if we're being inclusive, we don't need these specialist programs?
Yeah, well, I don't think I'm not sure that I've outed myself to you before, Peter, but I actually started my post-school life. I was going to be going into secondary school teaching, and I was training to be a PE science maths teacher. And, for an environment to be fully inclusive, we actually need our schools to be taking those students that are being mainstreamed, or those students that are in special schools, and giving them the same opportunities as everybody else. I know of incidents almost every week in Sydney, which at the Paralympics in 2000, where children of school age with disabilities are being discriminated against in school sports programs. One of them, not far from me last year, astounded me, where a headmaster phoned up the parents of a child with very mild cerebral palsy, fully ambulant, and said to the parents, first term, you can come and pick your son up at X time. And the parents said, why? And they said, well, obviously he's not going to be able to participate in our sports programs for the normal kids. Now, where you don't have an inclusive school program, then you can't expect the flow under the rest of society, whereas people with disabilities have had all those same opportunities in the school swimming program and athletics and football or whatever else it happens to be. So I'd say the education department is one of the main ports of calls to be far more inclusive.
Excellent. Okay, I'll ask you one more question around your article in the conversation. Now, in that article, which is called Beyond the Paralympics, Where to for Disability Sport in Australia, now you talk about some of the complex variables that contribute to participation for people with disability. Now, clearly there's a link between opportunities to participate and the level of support need. You've done research on it. I think it's quite obvious, really, there is a link there. What are some of the things that need to change if people with high support needs in particular are going to get a chance to participate? I know it's we could be here all night talking about that one, but just to give a couple of things maybe.
Yeah, look, without a doubt, the first one it's a much bigger issue than just for sport, and we're starting to address it in Australia. We've been behind the UK with regards to individualised packages. So at the moment, the way people are funded for either personal care or for, and I hate the word, respite, which really should translate into recreation or enrichment or education or whatever the desires of the individuals are, or dance or arts or crafts, doesn't matter really what it is. That the way they're currently funded is done through service providers. Now, most of those service providers don't have a great deal of experience in recreation, the arts, sport or tourism, and hence those programs get wedged in amongst all sorts of other needs to do with the structure of group home environments or the demarcation between school or post-school options or whatever it happens to be. So when it comes to one of the main things that people with high support needs say, either the organisation don't have staff that understand my needs or programs that would allow me to participate, or I'm not able to get the attendance support for me to bring along to be able to participate in those environments because of OH&S or industrial relations demarcations. So it just becomes too bloody hard, apart from having accessible transport. And we don't even, then once they get included, one of the things I unveiled in my research was that the Department of Health, who signs off on personal aids for disabled people in New South Wales, were getting children with disabilities to sign that they wouldn't participate in sporting programs with their electric wheelchairs because of the extra maintenance costs that they brought. So, which I was flabbergasted, the Minister for Sport was flabbergasted, but that's still the situation today. So with those people with high support needs, basic supporting infrastructure to get them involved, social infrastructure to have them supported within those environments, whether they're mainstream or segregated, and that should be a choice for the individual.
Yep.
So and I'm sure you've seen the terrific work that the Power Wheelchair Sports guys do. Fantastic program, but it's located out predominantly at Mount Druitt. So if you're on the Northern Beaches or if you're down in the Shire in Sydney, for example, just the cost of getting there in a wheelchair accessible cab blow you out of the water. So there's if we're talking in an environmental sense, there's a accumulated series of constraints that conspire against somebody regularly being able to participate in sport, recreation, fitness, or whatever else people desire to do.
Yeah, I guess if people are watching this from all over the world, which they will be, in that immediate sport environment, individuals can make an impact in that immediate. We understand there's lots of other possible constraints and challenges to get there in the first place, but actually the active inclusion on the spot in the sports field is often the easy bit, really, in some ways. That once they've got to that position, they're there, let's get on with it, and let's look at some fairly simple, straightforward adaptations and modifications. So there's a lot that people can do in the actual environment of sport where it takes place. It's so adaptable. Sport as a vehicle is so adaptable that if people can get there and meet all those other challenges that you've outlined, that sport offers such a great opportunity once people have managed to get there.
Yeah, and given that this is going around the world, from what I've read, the Australian situation isn't that different to what's going on globally. There is some different cultural contexts, and certainly speaking to my friends in Hong Kong on my last stay there again, there's some other challenges culturally faced around sport. But one of the issues with disability sport is also having a critical mass once people are in a position to be able to participate. So the example I gave before, and I apologise for our international viewers, Mount Druitt in Sydney is in the western suburbs. Sydney is a very geographically spread city, so we're talking, possibly, anything from 3/4 of an hour in a taxi to 2 hours in a taxi to get from one end of Sydney to the other, and then not even throwing in things like peak hour, or there to be enough power wheelchair sports people on a game of whatever it is, whether it's soccer or volleyball or rugby league. That's a pretty big undertaking to get a critical mass together to enjoy sport on a regular basis.
Yeah, exactly. Brilliant, Simon. I know you've got a dash very shortly. I really appreciate your time. The article will be here for people to go through, plus this video and the transcript as well, which they can download of this episode. Really appreciate your time and input again here. And if people want to make comment at the bottom of this episode, there'll be a spot to be able to do that, as in all these episodes around opinion and debate. So thank you very much, Simon, and much appreciated.
Not a problem. I'm just going to get a last word in. I'll also send Peter two resources. One is the Australian Sport Commission report that was done in conjunction with UTS on participation and non-participation of people with disability in active sport and recreation. And another one's a recent article that we've had published in Disability in Society that specifically looks at people with the highest support needs in the intellectual disability area. And I'll make those open for distribution to anyone that would like copies.
Brilliant. Okay, I can do that if you want to send those through, Simon. Thanks again, and we'll be in touch soon.
Okay, looking forward to catching up.
Thank you.